Have you noticed that some people reach their 70s and 80s with a vitality that seems almost unfair, while others, just as chronologically young, seem diminished long before their time? For decades, we assumed this was simply luck, genetics, the hand you were dealt. But something interesting has emerged from the research. The difference between these two outcomes is not random. It follows patterns. It obeys principles. And those principles have almost nothing to do with the advice you see in headlines or the latest diet craze. What we are discovering is that aging is not a fixed process you simply endure. It is an architecture you build, year by year, choice by choice, often without realizing what you are constructing. Today, we are going to look at that architecture, not as a collection of rules, but as a way of understanding what your body has been telling you all along. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The architecture of longevity, building a life that lasts. There is a question that becomes more interesting with each passing year. It is not simply how long will I live, but rather, what will those years feel like? The difference between these two questions is the difference between duration and experience, between quantity and quality. And for those of us who have already lived 5 decades or more, the second question often carries more weight than the first. We have all known people who reached an advanced age but spent their final years confined by limitation, by bodies that would not cooperate, by minds that had faded, by energy that had long since departed. And we have known others, perhaps fewer in number, who seemed to move through their later decades with a different kind of grace. They remained engaged, curious, capable. They walked easily, thought clearly, and approached each morning as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. What accounts for the difference? This is not a simple question, and it does not have a simple answer. But after decades of observation, research, and the collected wisdom of cultures around the world, certain patterns have emerged. Certain principles appear again and again in the lives of those who age well. These principles do not guarantee a long life. Nothing can do that. But they do appear to shape the experience of aging in profound and predictable ways. This is what we will explore together. Not as a checklist of rules to follow or a prescription to obey, but as an architecture, a way of thinking about how a human life is built and how it might be built to last. Part 1. The nature of the question. Before we examine the strategies that may support healthy aging, it is worth considering why this question has become so urgent in our time. For most of human history, living past 50 was itself an achievement. The average life expectancy in ancient Rome was around 25 years. In medieval England, it was approximately 30. Even as recently as 1900, a child born in the United States could expect to live only 47 years. Today, a person turning 50 in a developed country can reasonably expect another 30 to 40 years. This is not a small shift. It is an entirely new category of human experience. For the first time in history, large numbers of people are living decades beyond the point where their grandparents' generation had already declined or departed. This creates an interesting challenge. We have inherited most of our ideas about aging from a time when aging looked very different. The models we carry in our minds, the expected trajectory of decline, the inevitable loss of function, the narrowing of possibilities, were shaped by conditions that no longer apply. We are living in a territory for which there is no reliable map. The question, then, is not simply how to grow older, but how to grow older in a way that honors both the realities of biology and the possibilities of this new landscape. It is a question that requires us to think carefully about what aging actually is, what drives it, and what influence we might reasonably have over its expression in our own lives. Part 2. The biology of time. To understand how we might influence the aging process, it helps first to understand what that process actually involves. Aging is not a single thing. It is not a switch that flips at a certain age or a program that runs on a fixed schedule. It is, rather, a collection of changes that occur over time, changes at the cellular level, the tissue level, and the whole body level. At the cellular level, several things happen. Cells divide, and each division shortens the protective caps on our chromosomes, structures called telomeres. When telomeres become too short, cells can no longer divide at all. They enter a state called senescence, where they remain alive but cease to function normally. These senescent cells accumulate over time and begin to affect the cells around them, creating a kind of biological static that interferes with normal tissue function. Meanwhile, the energy-producing structures within our cells, the mitochondria, become less efficient. They produce more waste and less usable energy. This contributes to a gradual decline in cellular function that affects every tissue in the body. Outside the cells, other changes occur. The connections between cells become less reliable. Communication breaks down. Tissues lose some of their elasticity and regenerative capacity. The immune system, which once responded quickly to threats, becomes slower and less precise. These changes are universal. They happen to everyone who lives long enough. But they do not happen at the same rate for everyone. Two people of the same chronological age can have very different biological ages, very different levels of cellular function, tissue health, and overall resilience. This is the space where lifestyle, environment, and perhaps even mindset appear to exert their influence. What researchers have observed is that the rate of aging is not fixed. It can be accelerated by certain conditions, chronic inflammation, poor nutrition, persistent stress, physical inactivity, and it may be slowed by others. This is not about stopping aging, which is not possible. It is about influencing its pace and, perhaps more importantly, its expression in our daily lives. Part 3. The architecture of influence. If aging is a process rather than a fixed destination, then the question becomes, which aspects of this process are most responsive to our choices? What can we actually influence? And how? Over decades of observation, researchers have identified several domains that appear consistently in the lives of those who age well. These are not secrets or discoveries. They are patterns that have been observed across cultures, across centuries, and across populations. They are, in a sense, the architecture of longevity, the underlying structure upon which a long and vital life is built. The first pillar, movement as maintenance. There is perhaps no more consistent finding in all of aging research than this. People who move regularly age differently than people who do not. This is not about athletic performance or physical perfection. It is about the simple, cumulative effect of regular movement on every system of the body. Consider what happens when you move. Your heart pumps more efficiently, delivering oxygen and nutrients to tissues throughout your body. Your blood vessels remain flexible and responsive. Your muscles send signals to your brain that help maintain coordination and balance. Your bones receive the mechanical stimulation they need to maintain their density. Your lymphatic system, which has no pump of its own, relies on muscle contraction to move waste products out of your tissues and into your circulation. These effects are not trivial. They are the difference between a cardiovascular system that remains adaptable and one that stiffens with age, between bones that remain strong and ones that gradually weaken, between joints that retain their range of motion and ones that lock into patterns of restriction. The type of movement matters less than the consistency. Traditional cultures around the world did not exercise in the way we understand it today. They did not go to gyms or follow workout programs. They simply moved as part of daily life, walking to market, tending gardens, building shelter, carrying water. This constant, Low-level activity provided the mechanical stimulation their bodies needed to maintain function. For those of us living in more sedentary environments, this requires a different approach. We must intentionally introduce movement into days that would otherwise contain very little. This might mean walking regularly, with enough duration and frequency to create a meaningful effect. It might mean maintaining strength through resistance work, which becomes increasingly important as muscle mass naturally declines with age. It might mean practicing balance, which has been shown to reduce the risk of falls and the devastating consequences that often follow. The key insight is this: movement is not something you do in addition to living. It is a form of maintenance for the body you will need tomorrow. Each time you move, you are signaling to your body that you intend to keep using it. And your body responds to that signal by maintaining the systems that make movement possible. The second pillar: metabolic clarity. Beneath the surface of our daily experience, a complex metabolic dance is constantly underway. Hormones rise and fall. Nutrients are processed and stored. Energy is extracted from food and distributed to tissues that need it. This metabolic system is the engine room of the body, and its condition has profound implications for how we age. One of the most consistent observations in longevity research is that people who maintain metabolic flexibility, the ability to efficiently process and utilize energy from different sources, tend to have better health outcomes across the board. They maintain more stable energy levels throughout the day. They carry less excess fat, particularly around the midsection where it poses the greatest risk. They experience fewer of the sharp swings in blood sugar that can, over time, damage blood vessels and nerves. This metabolic clarity appears to be influenced by several factors. The composition of food matters. Whole foods that release their energy slowly tend to support more stable metabolism than highly processed foods that flood the system with sugar and refined fats. The timing of food matters. Patterns that include periods without eating appear to give the metabolic system time to reset and repair. And perhaps most importantly, the overall load matters. Consuming more energy than the body can usefully employ creates a backup that stresses every part of the metabolic system. What is interesting is that different populations around the world have maintained metabolic health on very different diets. Some traditional cultures ate diets very high in fat, deriving most of their calories from animal sources. Others ate diets very high in carbohydrates, based on tubers and grains. Still others ate mixtures that would confuse modern dietary categories. The common thread was not the specific macronutrient ratio, but the quality of the food and its appropriateness to the context in which these people lived. This suggests that there is no single correct way to eat for metabolic health. There are only principles that can be adapted to individual circumstances. Whole foods generally support better outcomes than processed ones. Eating patterns that include periods without food appear to offer metabolic advantages. And paying attention to how different foods make you feel, your energy, your digestion, your mental clarity, provides information that no external guideline can replace. The third pillar: the nervous system and its balance. There is a part of your nervous system that operates entirely without your conscious awareness. It regulates your heart rate, your digestion, your breathing, your immune response. It decides when to send blood to your muscles and when to send it to your digestive tract. It determines whether your body is in a state of growth and repair or a state of readiness and defense. This is the autonomic nervous system, and it has two main branches. The sympathetic branch prepares you for action. It raises your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, and releases stress hormones that mobilize energy. This is the system that kept our ancestors alive in the face of immediate threats. The parasympathetic branch does the opposite. It slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and directs resources toward digestion, repair, and regeneration. This is the system that allows you to rest, to heal, and to recover. These two branches are meant to work in balance. The sympathetic system responds to challenges. Then the parasympathetic system restores order once the challenge has passed. But modern life has a way of disrupting this balance. Persistent work demands, financial pressures, information overload, and social stress can keep the sympathetic system engaged long after any actual threat has passed. The body remains in a state of low-grade readiness. And over time, this takes a toll. Chronic sympathetic activation has been linked to a long list of negative health outcomes. It promotes inflammation throughout the body. It interferes with sleep quality. It impairs digestion and nutrient absorption. It accelerates cellular aging. It even affects how the body processes and stores fat, encouraging accumulation around the abdomen where it poses the greatest metabolic risk. Supporting the parasympathetic system, then, becomes an important part of any strategy for healthy aging. This might involve practices that have been used for centuries across many cultures: focused breathing, meditation, time in nature, rhythmic movement. It might simply involve creating space in daily life for activities that feel restorative rather than demanding. The goal is not to eliminate stress entirely, which is neither possible nor desirable, but to ensure that periods of activation are balanced by periods of genuine recovery. What is interesting is that many of the other pillars of healthy aging also support nervous system balance. Regular physical activity helps regulate the stress response. Good nutrition provides the raw materials the nervous system needs to function properly. Social connection, which we will discuss shortly, has been shown to activate parasympathetic pathways. These systems do not operate in isolation. They support and reinforce each other in ways that make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. The fourth pillar, the inner landscape. There is a dimension of health that is harder to measure than blood pressure or cholesterol, but no less important. It has to do with how we relate to ourselves, the stories we tell about who we are, the way we interpret our experiences, and the quality of our internal dialogue. Researchers who study aging have noticed something interesting. People who maintain a positive self-perception of aging, who see it as a time of continued growth and possibility rather than inevitable decline, tend to live longer and healthier lives. This association holds even after accounting for objective health measures. How you think about aging appears to influence how you experience it. This is not about positive thinking in the superficial sense. It is not about pretending that challenges do not exist or denying the real changes that come with time. It is about the fundamental stance you take toward your own life and your own future. Do you see yourself as someone who is capable of learning, adapting, and growing? Do you believe that your choices matter and that you have some influence over how your life unfolds? Or do you see yourself as a passive recipient of decline, subject to forces beyond your control? These beliefs matter because they shape behavior. Someone who believes their efforts can make a difference is more likely to make those efforts. They are more likely to walk, to choose nutritious food, to seek social connection, to engage with life. Someone who believes decline is inevitable and uncontrollable has little motivation to do any of these things. Their beliefs become a self-fulfilling prophecy. There is also a deeper layer to this. The relationship we have with ourselves, the quality of our internal attention, appears to affect our biology directly. Chronic self-criticism, persistent negative self-talk, and a harsh internal judge all activate stress pathways in the body. They keep the sympathetic nervous system engaged and the stress response active. Over time, this creates the same kind of wear and tear as any other chronic stressor. Developing a different kind of internal relationship is possible, but it requires practice. It involves learning to observe thoughts without automatically believing them. It involves recognizing that the voice of self-criticism is not the whole truth about who you are. It involves cultivating a stance of curiosity and compassion toward your own experience, even when that experience is difficult. This is not easy work, and it does not happen overnight. But for those who undertake it, the rewards extend far beyond any single health measure. They touch every aspect of life. The fifth pillar: connection and context. Human beings are not designed to live alone. This is not a sentimental observation, but a biological fact. We evolved in groups, and our bodies and brains are shaped by that evolutionary history. Social connection is not an optional extra for human health. It is a requirement. The research on this point is remarkably consistent. People with strong social connections live longer than people without them. They have better cardiovascular health, stronger immune function, and lower rates of cognitive decline. They recover more quickly from illness and surgery. They report higher levels of well-being and lower levels of depression and anxiety. Conversely, social isolation and loneliness have been shown to be as damaging to health as smoking, obesity, or physical inactivity. They increase inflammation throughout the body, disrupt sleep, and accelerate cognitive aging. They create a physiological state that resembles chronic stress, with all the negative consequences that entails. What counts as connection varies from person to person. For some, it is family relationships that provide the deepest sense of belonging. For others, it is friendships built over decades. For still others, it is participation in community organizations, religious groups, or volunteer activities. The common thread is not the specific form of connection, but the experience of being seen, known, and valued by others. Connection also provides something less tangible, but equally important: a sense of purpose and meaning. People who feel that their lives matter to others, that they have something to contribute, tend to maintain their health and vitality longer than those who feel adrift or irrelevant. This sense of purpose appears to protect against the cognitive and physical declines that can accompany aging. There is a practical implication here. In a society that often segregates people by age, maintaining connection across generations requires intention. It means seeking out opportunities to be with younger people, to share what you have learned, to remain engaged with the concerns of the wider world. It also means nurturing the relationships that have sustained you over time, making the effort to stay in touch, to show up, to be present. Connection is not something that happens to you. It is something you create, maintain, and protect. And like any other form of health maintenance, it requires regular attention and effort. The sixth pillar: the information environment. We live surrounded by information. It comes at us from screens and speakers, from notifications and headlines, from conversations and comments. This information environment is not neutral. It affects how we feel, how we think, and, increasingly, how our bodies respond to the world around them. The relationship between information and biology is not widely discussed, but it is real. When you encounter threatening news, your body responds as if the threat were present. Your stress hormones rise. Your heart rate increases. Your sympathetic nervous system activates. This is an ancient response to modern stimuli. Your body does not distinguish between a physical threat and a symbolic one. It responds the same way to both. Over time, sustained exposure to threatening or disturbing information can keep the stress response chronically activated. The body remains in a state of low-grade readiness, even when no actual threat exists. And as we have already discussed, chronic stress activation has consequences for every system in the body. This is not an argument for ignoring the world's problems or retreating from engagement with difficult realities. It is an argument for awareness, for understanding that what you pay attention to shapes your internal state. Just as you would not eat food that made you physically ill, it may be worth considering whether the information you consume is supporting or undermining your well-being. Some people find it helpful to create boundaries around their information intake. They limit news to certain times of day. They choose sources that provide context rather than simply triggering emotional responses. They balance exposure to problems with exposure to solutions, to beauty, to the ordinary goodness of daily life. Others find that practices like time in nature, where the information environment is simpler and slower, help restore balance after periods of intense stimulation. Still others use meditation or focused breathing to create a kind of internal buffer, a space between stimulus and response where choice becomes possible. The key insight is that your attention is not infinite. What you give it to matters. And over the course of decades, the cumulative effect of your attention, what you have looked at, listened to, and dwelled upon, shapes not only your mind but your body as well. Part 4. Integration and application. We have now examined several domains that appear to influence how we age. Movement, metabolism, nervous system balance, internal relationship, social connection, and information environment. Each of these is important in its own right, but their real power emerges when they work together. Consider how these domains interact. Regular movement improves metabolic function, which supports nervous system balance. A well-regulated nervous system makes it easier to maintain positive internal dialogue and to engage with others. Social connection provides a buffer against stress, which reduces the burden on the metabolic system. The information environment influences stress levels, which affect everything else. These are not separate systems. They are aspects of a single integrated whole. This integration has practical implications. It means that small changes in one area can have ripple effects throughout the system. A decision to walk regularly may improve not only cardiovascular function, but also mood, sleep quality, and metabolic health. A practice of quiet reflection may reduce stress, improve digestion, and make it easier to choose nourishing food. An effort to strengthen social connections may reduce loneliness, buffer against stress, and provide motivation for physical activity. It also means that the specific form of any practice matters less than its overall effect on the system. There is no single correct way to move, to eat, to rest, or to connect. There are only principles that can be adapted to individual circumstances, preferences, and capacities. What matters is that you are moving, that you are eating in a way that supports metabolic clarity, that you are creating conditions for nervous system balance, that you are cultivating a kind internal relationship, that you are maintaining meaningful connections, and that you are managing your information environment with awareness. For someone in their 50s or beyond, this might look very different than it would for a younger person. The body has different capacities and different needs. Recovery takes longer. Injuries are more consequential. Energy may be more limited. These are not failures. They are realities that must be worked with rather than against. The goal is not to achieve some external standard of performance or appearance. The goal is to maintain function, to preserve the ability to do the things that matter to you, to engage with the people you love, to participate in the activities that give your life meaning. This is a different kind of goal than the ones we are often taught to pursue. It is quieter, more personal, and ultimately more sustainable. Part 5. The question of identity. There is a deeper layer to this discussion that deserves attention. It has to do with who we understand ourselves to be and how that understanding changes over time. For many people, identity becomes entangled with physical appearance and capability. They see themselves as fit, as strong, as vital. And when the body begins to change, when strength declines, when appearance shifts, when capability narrows, this can feel like a threat to identity itself. Who am I if I am no longer the person I used to be? This is not a trivial question. It is at the heart of the aging experience for many people. And the way it is answered has consequences for everything we have discussed so far. If identity is too tightly bound to any particular form or function, then every change becomes a loss. Every decline becomes evidence of diminishment. The natural shifts that occur over time are experienced not as transitions, but as failures. This creates a kind of ongoing grief that colors every aspect of life. But there is another possibility. Identity might be understood as something more fundamental than any particular expression of it. You are not simply your body or your capabilities. You are the awareness that experiences these things. You are the continuity of consciousness that has witnessed decades of change and will witness decades more. The body changes, but the experiencer remains. This is not an abstract philosophical point. It has practical implications for how you navigate the aging process. When you are not attached to any particular form, you are free to adapt to changing circumstances. You can shift from one mode of movement to another without feeling that you have lost something essential. You can accept physical limitations without concluding that you are limited. You can watch the body change without believing that those changes define who you are. This kind of flexibility is not easy to cultivate, especially if you have spent decades identified with a particular self-image. But it is possible, and it becomes more possible with practice. Each time you observe a change without judging it, each time you adapt without despairing, you are building a different relationship with yourself and your life. Part 6. The cumulative effect. One of the challenges in thinking about healthy aging is that the effects of our choices are rarely immediate. You do not feel the benefit of a single walk or a single healthy meal in any dramatic way. The consequences of neglect are similarly delayed. You do not feel the damage from a year of poor nutrition or chronic stress in the moment. It accumulates quietly, beneath the surface, until one day it becomes visible. This delay makes it difficult to stay motivated. The human brain is designed to respond to immediate rewards, not distant possibilities. We are wired to seek pleasure now and worry about consequences later. This served our ancestors well in environments where the future was uncertain. It serves us less well in environments where our choices today will shape our experience decades from now. The only reliable counter to this tendency is to find value in the practices themselves, not just in their long-term outcomes. If you walk only because you hope to live longer, you may struggle to maintain the habit when the payoff seems distant. But if you walk because it feels good in the moment, because it clears your mind, because it connects you to your environment, then the practice carries its own reward. The long-term benefit becomes a bonus rather than the sole motivation. This is true for all the domains we have discussed. Eating well is not just about future health. It is about the experience of eating food that tastes good and feels good in your body. Rest is not just about recovery. It is about the experience of deep relaxation, of letting go, of being fully at rest. Connection is not just about longevity. It is about the experience of being seen and known and valued by another person. When you can find the immediate value in these practices, they become sustainable. They are no longer things you do for some distant reward. They are things you do because they are part of a life worth living. Part 7. A broader view. There is one more perspective that may be useful as we consider all of this. It has to do with how we situate our individual lives within a larger context. Every person reading these words is the product of an unbroken chain of life stretching back billions of years. Your ancestors survived famines, plagues, wars, and countless other challenges to deliver you here, to this moment. Their genes flow through you. Their resilience is encoded in your biology. You are not starting from nothing. You are building on a foundation that has already proven its durability. This perspective can shift how you relate to your own challenges. The difficulties you face, the aches, the limitations. The worries about the future are not signs of failure. They are simply the current expression of a process that has been unfolding for longer than anyone can comprehend. You are not supposed to be perfect. You are supposed to be here, participating in life as best you can. And you are not alone in this. The people around you are facing their own versions of the same challenges. The stranger on the street, the friend you have not called, the family member you disagree with, each of them is navigating their own relationship with time, with change, with the gradual unfolding of their lives. Recognizing this shared condition can soften the edges of isolation. It can make room for compassion, both for others and for yourself. This is not a small thing. Compassion for yourself, for others, for the difficulty of being human, may be the most important factor of all. It does not appear on any health metric. It is not measured in any study, but it colors everything else. It determines how you interpret your experience, how you respond to challenges, how you treat yourself on days when everything feels difficult. And unlike some of the other factors we have discussed, compassion is always available. It does not require physical capability or financial resources or social connection. It requires only the willingness to turn toward yourself and others with kindness rather than judgment. This is always possible. It is always enough. Part 8. A quiet conclusion. There is no final secret to healthy aging. There is no single practice that guarantees a long and vital life. There are only principles, patterns, and possibilities. There are only the choices you make each day and the way you relate to the life you are living. The research is clear on some points. Movement matters. The quality of food matters. Nervous system balance matters. Connection matters. The stories you tell yourself matter. How you manage your attention matters. These are not opinions. They are observations, repeated across cultures and centuries, about the conditions under which human beings tend to thrive. But the research is also clear that there are no guarantees. People who do everything right can still face difficult challenges. People who do everything wrong can sometimes live long and happy lives. This is not a reason to disregard the research. It is a reminder that we are dealing with probabilities, not certainties, with tendencies, not destinies. The most reasonable approach, then, is to do what you can, where you are, with what you have, to move when you can move, to eat in a way that feels nourishing, to create conditions for rest and recovery, to nurture the relationships that matter, to be kind to yourself, to pay attention to what you pay attention to, and to accept that some things are beyond your control. This is not a prescription. It is an invitation to consider how you want to live, not just how long. An invitation to build a life that feels worth living, day by day, year by year, decade by decade. An invitation to participate fully in the time you have, whatever that time turns out to be. The architecture of longevity is not a blueprint for avoiding death. It is a framework for engaging with life. And that engagement, that ongoing, imperfect, sometimes difficult, sometimes beautiful engagement is its own reward. In the end, the question is not how many years you accumulate, but what those years contain. Not the quantity of time, but the quality of experience. Not how long you live, but how fully you are alive in the time you have. This is the only question that has ever really mattered. And it is the only question to which each of us must find our own answer. If there is one idea to carry forward from our time together, it is this. The goal is not simply to add more years to your life, but to add more life to your years, to build a vessel capable of carrying your full humanity through whatever time remains. We would be honored to hear what resonated with you, what questions arose, or simply what you are reflecting on as you continue your own journey. If this conversation added something of value to your day, You are welcome to explore the other recordings in our library and to subscribe so that new wisdom finds its way to you when it becomes available. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.